From cash cow to billion-dollar liability. Boeing 737 models are back in the headlines, and once again it's for the wrong reasons. After the grounding of the Maxes comes the news that the current model could have defective parts. Boeing says up to 148 parts could be faulty, including wing components, which enable pilots to reduce speed. The Federal Aviation Administration has given the company 10 days to replace suspicious parts. While Boeing says the risk of a crash hasn't risen, the latest revelation has dealt a further blow to its reputation. And that's already having major economic consequences. Many airlines are already mulling cancelling their orders. That puts billions of dollars on the line. Prior to the concerns over the 737s, Boeing listed 4,636 orders, a figure that could face a steep drop, potentially enabling European competitor Airbus to profit. Its A320neo boasts similar features and had clocked 3,605 orders. With an increasing number of customers losing confidence in the Boeing brand, the aviation giant is likely to face more turbulent times.
Now, this comes as global airlines have been meeting in Seoul to discuss the future direction of the industry. Not long ago, the South Korean capital was at the centre of a region seeing strong growth in air travel. But now, all that's in doubt.
At the annual gathering of airline heavyweights, the picture is grim. Surging oil prices, a faltering global economy, and fears over passenger safety. It's been a turbulent 12 months.
Passenger demand is robust, but trade wars and protectionist measures are taking their toll on the cargo business. And rising costs for fuel, labour and infrastructure are squeezing margins.
The industry has cut its profit forecast by a fifth, expecting to take home $28 billion this year. That's after Icelandic airline WOW Air went bankrupt in March, the latest in a flurry of failed flight operators. And not referred to in the profit warning, the two fatal Boeing 737 MAX crashes and the continued grounding of the fleet that's plunged aviation into a crisis. Well, news that hundreds of 737s may have faulty wing parts only added to the uncertainty. Back in South Korea, IATA's boss said trust had been damaged, but tried to summon some positivity.
Looking to the future, the outlook is optimistic. Demand is forecast to double over the next 2 decades. With the cost of travel 40% lower than a decade ago, the freedom to fly is reaching more people than ever.
Such growing demand has forced the industry to reckon with its environmental impact. Members backed calls for an international carbon offsetting and reduction scheme.
Now for more, let's bring in DW's Fabian Kretschmer, who's been at that conference in Seoul. Fabian, this is IATA's first big gathering since those 2 deadly Boeing 737 MAX crashes. How has that impacted the industry?
Well, of course, that was the big topic, and most of the panels here in this conference where airline representatives from 290 airline carriers have been gathering. The Boeing 737 MAX was the fastest selling model of that company, but they have been grounded since March. And the industry here is actually very cautious in deciding about when their re-entry into service will be. Carsten Spohr, the CEO and newly elected IATA chairman, has said that responsibility comes first and also gaining public trust. And to deal with that matter, the organization will hold a meeting on June 26 to meet with carriers, manufacturers and regulators, and then will decide about the Boeing 737 MAX's re-entry, but they could not provide a time frame yet. Of course, this is also one of the factors why they cut their growth outlook for the next year.
Yeah, and of course, that aside, the industry is also bracing for the impact of those trade tensions affecting, in particular, air cargo traffic. How serious is that?
That's probably the biggest threat. I mean, $7.5 billion in profits were basically wiped off, mostly because of the trade issue between the US and China. Until now, it has mostly affected cargo traffic. For example, Lufthansa, they have been grounding 3 of their cargo planes, and it's unclear whether they will fly again in the near future. And also the chairman of the IATA has said that in the future also passenger traffic could be affected by the trade war. And another factor that should also not be forgotten is the rise of fuel prices. And that's a trend that will likely continue also in the next years.
And of course, just very briefly, there is talk of downsizing when it comes to passenger comfort. Is that the industry response to those cost-cutting measures that you talked about?
Well, we've seen big players going bankrupt, like India's Jet Airways. Also, South Korea's second biggest air carrier, Asiana, is really on the verge of bankruptcy and is up for sale. But I think that also has to do with another factor, basically presenting the industry in a more modest way, making air travel more sustainable, just as the awareness is growing that, air traffic is one of the big factors contributing to climate change.
All right, Fabian Kretschmer there, reporting from Seoul, from the IATA conference. Thank you so much.